Wide Awake in South Mississippi is brought to you by Against the Flow of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is the story of Jake Fayard, a Marine veteran who is unhappy with the political machine running the state of Mississippi. He decides to fight the corruption from the inside. Jake will face more challenges than he ever has and will stand up for what he thinks is right. His notoriously hot temper will push him to the edge of murder, along with his friend and brother, Kobe Bahanovich. Together, they will fight the system and give the power back to the citizens of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is now available on Amazon. The Wide Awake in South Mississippi podcast is hosted by Anthony Allen. If you have a news story, or if you are a political candidate and want to get on the show, please give me a call at area code 904-860-2502. All right, y'all. Time for another episode of Wide Awake in South Mississippi. Your host, Anthony Allen. And, those of y'all that are unaware, I am really big into history. And I love history. I absolutely do. I have another YouTube channel called History with Anthony O. Being a student of history, I draw on a lot of my conclusions based on how things used to be, were trying to be, and then how they are today. And I take them all and I put them all in context. Well, folks, there's some other stuff going on that I'd like to bring to your attention. There is a very old cemetery out in the north central part of the county. I would say it's probably close to being dead center in the middle of Harrison County. And it hasn't been used in a while. But it is an old African-American cemetery that, at least as far as records go, goes back to 1916. I honestly believe there are people that were using that cemetery for a burial ground longer than that. These people that were being buried out there were black. Now, down here in the South, it is no secret that we honestly were not that nice to black people in history. It's understood. It's admitted to. There was some very unfortunate things that happened. Unacceptable things, in my opinion. But in recent history, we have been doing our best to try to right those wrongs and correct our past misdeeds. But there is something going on right now that is kind of throwing it back into the misdeeds of our very unflattering past. And what's going on right now is the cemetery that I'm referring to was out in a community that I honestly had never heard of until recently, called Sidecamp. Sidecamp was a historically black area in Harrison County. A lot of railroad workers. I'm sure there was a lot of timber workers that were out there. And it's out off of Landon Road. The guy that owns the property is a man by the name of Ed Bird. I know him too. I didn't say we were friends, because we're not. Ed Bird got the property from his now deceased wife, and his wife BJ was a sweetheart. I can tell you that. BJ actually cared about people. Her father bought the property in 1960. I have gone back to 1939 on the records of this property through the county tax collector's office, the property records office. But I see no markings or no indications anywhere of this cemetery listed on any of the deeds. Well, the lady that I'm trying to help out actually has family buried out there, and her name is Dr. Sandra Walker. I have the utmost respect for this woman. She is known in the community. She's done a lot for a lot of disabled people in this community. She actually worked with my mom for a while, helping out disabled people who were suffering from developmental disabilities such as Down syndrome and the like. She was actually helping them to try to be able to have some form of quality of life. And she dedicated her life to this. So this, and again, you know, she has earned a doctorate. So, I mean, these are well-respected, well-respectable people about town. And all they want to do is honor their resting departed family members. That's all they want to do. Her mother, God bless her soul. Her mother, Dr. Walker's mother, I met her as well. Very sweet lady. She is knocking on 90 years old. She actually started looking for the cemetery to begin with a few years ago. And she actually lives relatively close to it. I mean, I would say within a good baseball's throw of it, of where the cemetery is located at. But the cemetery is on private property. I am of the personal opinion, y'all, that cemeteries are 100% a part of our history. They're a great source of genealogical research. They also show how our ancestors lived at the time. And they're an invaluable resource that, unfortunately, once they're neglected, they almost fade away. And then you have, like you had up in Raymond, Mississippi, a major corporation buying the land to just bulldoze over the top of it. Now, we have been smart enough, thankfully, to stop people from bulldozing and building over Indian mounds in the state of Mississippi. I think that was a smart move. You know, you're not going to go up to Philadelphia and bulldoze over, or, well, it's not even Philadelphia, it's actually in Winston County, but you're not going to bulldoze over Nana Warrior. You're not going to do that. You're not going to go and bulldoze over Emerald Mound. You're not going to bulldoze over any of the other mounds that are around the Natchez and Port Gibson area. Because those are protected places. Those are sacred places. We understand those as a place to research history. Why then do we allow these cemeteries to be dilapidated, placed on private property, kept away from the natural family who has loved ones buried there? My opinion, it's kind of sacrilegious to dig them up and reinter them somewhere else. They've already been there, some of them 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, more than 100 years, some of them. They should be left alone, but they should be respected. Again, this is a black cemetery, and it was in a historically black area, probably made up mainly of exploited laborers, would be my guess. Being one generation, maybe a generation and a half, two at the most, removed from slavery and trying to survive as best they can. they have earned our respect. They have earned the right to be kept in a respectful manner. They earned the right to be visited by their living relatives. Unfortunately, this is not being allowed to happen. I would like to put some pressure on the County Board of Supervisors and the state legislature to designate these places as places of historical importance, just like we do any of the old houses in downtown Biloxi, just like we do any of the old mansions surrounding the Natchez area, just as we do the old state capitol building, just as we do veteran cemeteries, and there are U.S. veterans buried in this cemetery, just as we have Beauvoir located in Biloxi. These places are no less of importance as any of those. In fact, quite honestly, they're probably more important, especially for genealogical research, because there wasn't a lot of records kept, and some of these are unmarked graves. A lot of these people were just chunked in the ground. I hate to admit it, but it is the truth. I read a report put out in the 1930s by Roosevelt's Public Works Department. And when I read those reports on how they portrayed white people versus black people, what they actually did was they did a study on black people instead of, and when it came to white people, they actually reported the good things they did. But the way they did the black people was they reported them and studied on them as if they were animals and the researchers were zoologists. Anybody seen Dave Chappelle's skit about eating chicken in Mississippi? That's pretty well how I felt when I read it. I actually felt disgusted. Even taking it in the historical context of the 1930s. I want to say it was 1936. When I read this, I didn't know. I know it wouldn't have been acceptable today, but I didn't know how it was acceptable back then. But it goes to show the attitudes toward black folks 100 years ago, 90 years ago, 80-something years ago. My grandmother was born in 1934 in southwest Mississippi. It gave me an understanding of how she was raised just by reading that. I've read other historical documents of the day, and I literally got a pain in my stomach from it. And now we have a landowner who's trying to do the exact same thing right here in the 21st century, in the year 2023, right here in Harrison County. Now, if that don't make you mad, you ain't paying attention or you ain't got a heart. These people are not trying to trespass on this man's land. I learned today that he has now blocked the access to the cemetery with a gate. I understand private property laws. I'm a big fan of private property. But I'm also a fan of doing the right thing. This man can sell that portion of the land after it's properly surveyed to the families of those who were buried there, and they are willing to buy it, and they are willing to offer him fair market value for that property and an access road to go to it. And the access road, it's already been approved that it would be maintained by the county to go to that cemetery. But he's playing hardball for no reason. This property, this part of the property that the cemetery is sitting on is just about worthless. It's on wetlands. Having been out there on that property, on that piece of the property, close to the cemetery, standing in ankle-deep of water, and it wasn't in a creek, and it hadn't rained in days, tells me that it is wetlands. You can't develop over it. So the land is really worthless. These people are not trying to put a shopping mall in the middle of Lizana or in the middle of that part of Harrison County. All they're trying to do is pay respect to their deceased family members and learn something about themselves and learn something about the history of where they came from. And I think it's a shame that they're being denied that right. I would like to enlist y'all's help to try to put some pressure on the county to do what they can to ensure that they are able to go and visit their people. Thank you for listening, and if you want to help out, I'll be glad to put you in touch with Dr. Walker and her family. You can give me a call at area code 904-860-2502. Or there's somebody else that you're welcome to call, and that man is Rip Daniels, and you can call him at his radio station at 228-896-5307. We'd love to have your help. Y'all have a good day. Thank you for listening.